Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. Hang out with this nerd.
Ted.
And today we're going to do another edition of our legendary monsters.
If you want to jump down the description below, you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips as well as learn how to game with us. So,
today we're going to be doing our very first legendary monster, straight out of the Tome of Beasts for 5e. There's quite a few legendary monsters, so you can start at page 184 for his write-up, Lord of the Hunt.
Indeed.
And then jump over to page 188, and that's where his actual entry is.
So it's a sizable entry. There's a lot going on with him.
Yeah, so they give you a couple paragraphs, like basically telling you about the Lord of the Hunt, and then you get a 2 full-page spread of what he can do and basically his mechanics.
Right.
But here's the thing, right? If you're familiar with, I think it's Celtic mythology, if you're a fan of the Dresden Files, this guy is basically the Earl King.
Indeed.
The Wild Hunt, the Huntsman. This is a theme that comes up over and over again. One of my very first druids of in D&D in first edition worshipped the god Sylvanus, which is a Celtic god, and the Wild Hunt was listed in the original deities and demigods under that section. Right. Historically, mythology-wise, I don't know how correct that is, but that's where my knowledge comes from. So it's always been a fascinating and an intriguing figure to me.
I agree. I know more about it solely from the Earl King in the Dresden Files, and they do when Jim Butcher, who writes the Dresden Files, does his research, he does that. He goes and he checks things that actually pair off into mythology, and he doesn't cite it, but he uses those things so that it makes those mythologies more real, and he integrates it into his fictional world. So I love everything he's done with it. So when I was reading through the Lord of the Hunt, I'm like, this is exactly just the Earl King. So
yeah. So the only things it's the entry itself, I'm a little disappointed that there's not more about the hunt. But you can kind of make that up. One of his abilities is to basically make someone join the hunt.
Indeed.
And charm them. So the question is, like, how would you use this in your game? What kind of challenge is this going to be for your players? They have him listed as a challenge 18, and he has a whole slew of abilities, and he's a very physical character.
Right. Now, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could use this guy in a D&D game, and some of that is literally inspired by what happens in the Dresden Files. We see, spoiler alert, we see Harry having to talk to the Earl King. We see him having to try and get away from the Earl King. We see that them eventually fighting, and we see Harry being a part of the hunt. So you could do all of these type of things.
We also see him summon the Earl King.
Yes,
and it's kind of the reason why he has to do all that other stuff later.
Yeah, all of this happens because he is foolish enough to actually summon and think he can bind the Earl King, and we all know that that's not really possible. So, I think you could do that kind of stuff with a D&D game, and you could introduce him and have him be a part of some kind of Fey festivities, and the characters could get to interact with him. If they wind up doing something that causes his ire, then it could be this antagonist that is out there every so often to harass your players. You could wind up doing chase scenes with it. They could be trying to get away while fighting small CR hounds that the players can actually deal with while continuing to flee.
While this guy's taking pock shots at him.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't even go that far. I would say that they're just on the outskirts. Once they're enough to be able to withstand some of his damage, okay, well now he's back. He's back again. He's got more powerful, hounds, and you're dealing with him.
Well, you might not even need the more powerful hounds. I would almost treat him almost like a natural hazard or traps that are kind of going off. Where every round you might have to deal with some of his attacks, but the objective really isn't to fight him because that's not going to really go all that well for you.
And then like the players could completely be like, look, we need to find a way to appease this guy, and you could figure out a way to curry favor or do something that puts you back in his good graces, and then perhaps he could become an ally for your party to be able to handle a bigger threat.
So one of the really interesting things about Lord of the Hunt is he has regional effects and lair effects, yet he doesn't really have either. Right. So he doesn't take up a lair anywhere. He doesn't claim a region of his own. He's got a secret hidden fortress somewhere that no one knows where it's at. They're like, it could be on the Plane of Shadow.
Well, maybe
it could
that's
be on
the
the
problem.
Feywild.
Maybe he's forgotten where his home is, and that's the purpose of the hunt. He's trying to find home.
Maybe, but I don't think so.
No, it says that when he sets up camp, as soon as his camp is set, his magic is so powerful, it starts to warp the area around him. On one side, game becomes more plentiful so that all his people can eat, but it also, any natural critters also become more skittish, so therefore domestic.
Yeah.
So therefore, anything that you're trying to deal with, it doesn't want to be here because it knows the hunt is out there.
Yeah, and also it kind of makes note of like they don't like poachers as well.
Oh, yeah.
Even though there's more food, they're like, it's our food. But the point I was actually getting to, that could actually be an adventure itself. Like you might have to go to the go and have court with the Lord of the Hunt, and you might have to go to his encampment, and there could be some challenges and tribulations that you have to go through to get there. Not necessarily combat, but
social encounters.
So yeah, social encounters. Basically negotiating with his people to get permission to come into it. Maybe to even earn that right, you have to participate in some of the games that are going on in the competitions. Prove your worth that way. Other ways of using the Earl King-esque type monster NPC, the Lord of the Hunt here, would be like, what if he's rampaging through the countryside with his hunt, and he scoops up some like important NPCs in it with in your campaign, and like your players have to figure out how to extract them from the hunt.
Easy. Wait 8 hours.
Maybe that's the game mechanics, but they're NPCs, so maybe it works different for them. Maybe if they spend the full 8 hours in the hunt, they'll permanently become part of the hunt. You could definitely come up with some cool story elements to introduce into that aren't necessarily in the book.
Of course, you always have the ability to bend and twist as you see fit.
While I'm here, I might as well show off a picture of the Lord of the Hunt.
Now it says he's a Fey Lord, Fey King, however you want to look at it. My only qualm is this dude looks human. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow. I'm having a hard time seeing this character as elven. That's about it.
That's okay. I still think the art's pretty cool.
The art is fantastic. I love that picture. It's a great.
Hey, if you're a CR18 elf,
if you want a beard, you can have a beard.
You can grow a beard if you want to.
I'll go with that. Another thing that you could actually do if you want to kind of force the characters into an antagonistic, conference with this guy. Just that whole concept of poaching on his territory is kind of a no-no. So the players could camp down for the night somewhere, unaware that he is camped out somewhere near here as well.
Or he can even come later. Like, I don't think he's going to care who's there first.
No, well, yeah, either way. But you go out to hunt because everybody needs to hunt and get food while you're adventuring, and somehow you wander into area that's kind of claimed by his encampment, and he, because he's supremely magical, finds out about it, and now you've incurred his wrath.
Yeah, so you're going to get a stern talking to. And it may involve pointy things.
Stern talking to with arrows and spear.
Yes. So, he has some interesting abilities. Expert rider. That means you cannot attack his mount pretty much ever. You have to attack him.
If you do cause like an AoE kind of thing, and the mount's going to get to use his saving throws, and if it passes the saving throw, it takes no damage.
Yeah, so it basically has evasion. He's got a handful of spells that he can use
Got Hunter's Mark at will, baby.
Yeah, he's definitely rocking out the Hunter's Mark all the time. Which they don't even mention that in his other stuff. And all of his weapons do weapon damage plus poison damage. He rocks 3 attacks around. He has a reaction for a parry for 1 attack, so he can try and deflect some stuff.
Yeah, it ups his AC by 3 for the attack. Kind of nice.
Yeah, he can. His legendary actions. He can basically take another attack. He can get another movement from either him or his mount if he's mounted. Call of the Hunt is the one we mentioned. That's the one where he blows the horn and is like, "All right, you're in the hunt now. You're on our team." I was a little disappointed though that the CR is a little low for challenge 18. It's only a 16,
right.
And and you get a save every round. So I feel like if you're tackling this guy, you got to be like 15 and above.
Right, but if you're like, it's a wisdom save, so like clearly you're not going to use it on the cleric.
No, charisma save.
It's a charisma save.
Yeah, I mean that's the only saving grace. That's probably a weaker saving throw for a lot of characters.
Yeah, unless you're talking, warlocks, paladins, and what have you. Charisma is a dump stat for a lot of people. So
yeah, so you got some interesting things there. The lair actions and regional effects, which we had discussed the regional effects a little bit, and that had to do with basically making things more plentiful. Where he's at. Game trails appear with game essentially. So kind of cool stuff. He basically has like a killer poison plant growth effect he can throw out every round as one of his lair actions. So definitely you don't want to fight this guy on his own home turf.
But that's the thing, like, unless he's mid-hunt, which, he might just avoid you at that point in time. Like, depending upon how the confrontation needs to happen. If he's mid-hunt, he's surrounded by other things. He's not doing this alone. If he's stopped, he automatically is in camp, which means his lair and regional effects are going to be there.
Yeah.
So he's a challenge either way you look at it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He, one of his other lair effects is a war cry. He also has a marking ability.
He's got some spells, the ability to summon other fae. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, and again, this type of challenge is never going to be alone. Like he's designed, just like the design and nature of the character is the fact that he is surrounded by the hunt. And what the hunt is can be different from campaign to campaign, and even from session to session. Really, however the DM's using him. The only thing that goes through as an overarching theme is the Shadow Hounds.
I don't know if there's a Shadow Hound in the book, or whether you would just use some other type of beast.
I think there was a Celtic type monster that kind of went along those lines. And there's Fiendum Folio and the earlier editions of D&D had all kinds of scary wolf-like creatures. But I would say really any type of predators really work really well in the hunt.
Right.
And you can change it up depending on what kind of game you're running. Like I could definitely see reflavoring this. And it's not so much that it's a reflavor, but the fact that you could say, well, the hunt appears where the hunt appears. Like, what if it happened at sea?
Right. Oh, yeah.
So like, the hunt is now full of sharks and orcas or something,
right.
Something crazy, or sea monsters. And essentially,
he's riding the Kraken.
Maybe he's totally Aquamaning it up. Would be another way to do it. Or what if you're playing like a Spelljammer game? And instead, the hunt has just gone cosmic.
Now, in our game back in the day, you made something similar to this guy, right?
Yeah, I did. I did make my own, basically, huntsman.
Do you know what you based it off of, or what you used?
The huntsman.
Okay, from the original?
Wild Hunt.
Okay.
Yeah. That I did like my version.
Okay.
It had my lore, my story, and everything, but I cannot remember exactly what it was. Basically one of the things that my version did was he would summon a maze, and he would hunt whoever you put in the maze.
Right.
And if you can make it out of the maze by dawn or survive, I think it was just survive.
I believe it was we had to get out by dawn.
Yeah, it was
if you didn't make it out,
you became part of it.
You became part of the maze.
Yeah, so basically, So his hunt was a little different in the sense that it was like confined to this labyrinth that he could summon, and then he would trap things in the labyrinth, and they would become part of the future hunts. And then but then if you made it out and survived, he granted you some kind of boon,
Right.
which you guys had gotten or whatever.
I believe that I'd seen two different campaigns where that was kind of a theme, so it was kind of cool. So
Where I had used it, yeah. Yeah, it was a fun character. Like, I wish I could remember what I came up with now. I mean, it's going back like 15 years, so.
yeah, when you harken back to how many different places have we gamed since then?
That's true. So with that, that's our latest edition of Legendary Monsters. This time we're pulling from the Tome of Beasts. We'll put a link in the description below for you to either purchase it or the page number if you already have it to go check it out, because it's a really cool monster. And with that, while you're at it, you guys can add in the comments below your favorite legendary monsters from the Tome of Beasts, or any book for that matter. Make them up if you want. We don't care. And while you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can support us over on Patreon.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy. And files, and they do. When Jim Butcher, who writes the Joes and Files, does his research, he does that. He goes and he checks things that actually pair off into mythology, and he doesn't cite it, but he uses those things so that it makes those mythologies more real, and he integrates it into his fictional world. So I love everything he's done with it. So when I was reading through the Lord of the Hunt, I'm like, this is exactly just the Earl King. So
yeah. So the only things it's the entry itself a little the hunt.
Indeed.
And then jump over to page 188, and that's where his actual entry is.
So it's a sizable entry. There's a lot going on with him.
Yeah. So they give you a couple paragraphs, like basically telling you about the Lord of the Hunt, and then you get a 2 full-page spread of what he can do and basically his mechanics.
Right.
But here's the thing, right? If you're familiar with, I think it's Celtic mythology, if you're a fan of the Dresden Files, this guy is basically the Earl King.
Indeed.
The Wild Hunt, the Huntsman, pointed that there's not more about the hunt. But, you could kind of make that up. One of his abilities is to basically make someone join the hunt.
Indeed.
And charm them. So the question is, like, how would you use this in your game? What kind of challenge is this going to be for your players? They have him listed as a challenge 18, and he has a whole slew of abilities, and he's a very physical character.
Right. Now, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could use this guy in a D&D game, and some of that is literally inspired.
Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. Hang out with this nerd,
Ted.
And today we're going to do another edition of our Legendary Monsters.
If you want to jump down the description below, you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips as well as learn how to game with us. So today we're going to be doing our very first Legendary Monster, straight out of the Tome of Beasts for 5e. There's quite a few legendary monsters, so you can start at page 184 for his write-up. Lord of the This is a theme that comes up over and over again. One of my very first druids of in D&D in first edition worshipped the god Sylvanus, which is a Celtic god, and the Wild Hunt was listed in the original deities and demigods under that section. Right.
Historically, mythology-wise, I don't know how correct that is, but that's where my knowledge comes from. So it's always been a fascinating and an intriguing figure to me.
I agree. I know more about it solely from the Earl King in the Dresden